Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. It's Fitz and Gills this time around. Ooh, Gills, we're missing something. We're missing something. Where is it?
What are we missing?
Us.
There we go.
Us.
There you go.
We're missing us. My color's way off. I had to adjust some settings. I don't know. I'm having a bad color day apparently, and you look kind of pink, which I've been meaning to tell you. Look good with pink.
Well, maybe it's all the snow outside of your windows. It's making your studio just look white. That might be it.
I was going to go on a little road trip today, and the wind hit me, and I swear my car slid a little bit on I-70. I said, I think I'm going to go.
What were you doing on that road trip, Fitz?
I was running to Kansas City to pick up a few things. Anyhow, this podcast is brought to you by Ryan Gilbert and all the ladies that know Ryan Gilbert. Now, this podcast is about men's basketball. We did women's basketball yesterday or the other day. That didn't turn out the way we wanted it to because minutes within recording the VIP portion of that podcast, Jeff Mitty was no longer a candidate in Missouri because they hired someone. I thought that was interesting. I feel like almost like it got public and he said, I'm out. Because
you did good work with that. Thank you.
I had to work around that, and we will have a VIP portion of this podcast. If you don't know how that works, we do this podcast. It's up on YouTube, and then we do a separate, shorter podcast through Vimeo. It's not on YouTube, so that we can lock it behind our paywall, and boom, we get two podcasts out of one. We'll have a great question for that set aside. But Ryan Gilbert, you ready to get rolling with what we've got? We're not a whole lot of questions here, but we got enough to work with. Some pretty good stuff. Let's get rolling. Good things have been different with Achor. I've given him another name. I just thought he needed a little bit more. Remaining on the roster, K-State EMA 1989. What are your thoughts on what you call your rec basketball? I didn't say it out loud because I didn't want to say it out loud because he's a lot bigger than I am. Your thoughts?
He's bigger than anybody at the rec, but
yeah,
man, I have a couple thoughts on this. First, it's disappointing to see that happen with Achor, and I'm not sure if, and I think we're guilty of this, Fitz, a big enough deal wasn't made about this, right? There's nothing normal at all about a player departing mid-season, and I get it, it happens, but for 2 out of 3 seasons now, for whatever reason, Kansas State has had a player leave mid-year. That just absolutely cannot be happening moving forward for this program. But, Achor, I thought long and hard about this one because I think early on, after his dismissal or his parting ways or however you want to label that, right, it was easy to say, man, this, think of this team's on a 6-game losing streak. Where would they be right now if they had a guy like Achor? But when you look at the totality of this season, a season where K-State was playing full of newcomers, I don't know how much Achor really would move the needle. Now, he's got valuable experience, winning experience. He's won everywhere he had been. He had put up big numbers against KU, right, Fitz, in the NCAA tournament. And he's a hell of a player. I don't want to take anything away from Achor's abilities on the court, but, Coleman Hawkins is a hell of a player. Doug McDaniel is a hell of a player. K-State had talented guys on this team, but when you put together a group of newcomers, get them on the court, it's not always going to work out. And what happened with the 16 and 17 season for Kansas State, it didn't work out with all these newcomers. They just couldn't click and couldn't gel together consistently. I know they won on that winning streak, but by and large, it just wasn't able to work. So adding in yet another first-year player to that mix, I just don't think would have worked well. And I also think, Fitz, you have to look at, whose minutes is he going to be taking? I think we can be real here and say that David Gasson wouldn't play as much. And David Gasson was as consistent, as steady as we've seen from a K-State player in a long, long time. So if Achor was, I don't know, a different position, different player, there could be more of an argument to be made there. But David Gasson was top-notch in pretty much all areas for Kansas State. So I get it. Achor would have helped in terms of what he can bring you, but they didn't have him. David Gasson stepped up, but also kind of the main point that I made earlier, Fitz, is he was just going to be another newcomer on a team full of newcomers that couldn't win ultimately, I think, because they just they hadn't gelled together. They couldn't click. They couldn't get things to work out.
I'm fascinated by the situation because something just didn't click. There was a misconnection on this relationship between player and coaching staff fairly quickly. It didn't look like in the early games he was even interested in being out there. He didn't look like he wanted to play basketball at Kansas State. It was a strange situation. And again, we don't know his side of events. Maybe something did happen that just knocked him off track. And he's like, I don't really want to play with these guys. I'm not sure, but I'll say this. You're right. With a healthy Coleman Hawkins and David Gasson, he wouldn't want to play much. And I think that's what really stuck with him. He got beat out. I mean, he went from being a star at Samford to, Samford coming in here. And I may not only not start, I may not play a whole lot. And I don't think that's how he envisioned himself. I think he envisioned himself, look what I did to KU. I'm going to come in and roll the entire league. And then he found out he couldn't get on the floor with the team that would be in the middle of the league. So I think the only time he would have really been a benefit if he had been engaged at any point, he's never going to be a benefit to any team if he looks like he doesn't care to be out there. It's true of any player. Was when Hawkins got hurt, that would have been a more realistic person to slide into that spot. Is he as versatile as Coleman Hawkins? No. But I also believe he could have been a more consistent scorer than Coleman Hawkins. I don't think he would have passed a rebound, those type of things. And honestly, I didn't ever really see him enough to know about his defense. It didn't look good. Let's put it that way. He was getting beat down the court quite a bit. But I don't know that he would have really helped this team that much. And he certainly isn't going to help again any team with a crappy attitude. And maybe it wasn't him. Maybe there was something outside force here, but that's what happened. So I think it's unfortunate. On paper, he should have been a big asset to the team. In reality, he wasn't. And I don't think Coleman Hawkins getting hurt would have created an opportunity for him to be an asset to the team because I don't think he cared enough. I just don't think he was invested enough in Kansas State basketball.
And Achor, sorry, lost my train of thought for a sec, Fitz. Achor, the NIL there, you can maybe blame, quote unquote, blame Achor for being too self-confident or thinking that he could come in and own the place, like you mentioned, Fitz. But with his NIL, he was one of the highest paid guys on the team. And so that's, Achor is not the only one to blame there, I guess is what I'm saying, right? No. When you're setting that expectation, that spreads throughout the locker room. Everybody knows the expectation for a guy that's getting so much in NIL. I think that you can obviously blame Achor if you want to do that. Like you said, Fitz, I'm not going to disagree, but it was all around. All parties involved kind of missed out here and just ultimately failed, at the end of the day.
Yep, I would agree. Let's move on to the next one. This one is from KSU Royals Cat. Would you rather have 4 or 5-star recruit who didn't play enough, receive enough playing time at their power conference school, or a low-rated recruit who excelled at a lower level? This is a great question. And I don't think there's a general answer to it. I don't think you pick one or the other. I think you have to look at it in case-by-case basis. And honestly, at Kansas State, the answer has been the lower-level player. I don't think there's coaches out there saying, outside of maybe discipline issues, this kid is incredibly talented. He came to me as a 4-star, but I'm just not going to play him. There's a reason why you're not playing. And sometimes reasons fans don't understand. Maybe a kid is just lazy as hell. He looks like a player. He looks inspired in game time, but when it comes to lifting weights and doing practice, maybe he doesn't put it all out there. Or maybe as a 4 or 5-star player, things have always been easy for him, and now they're not easy, and he has hit the ceiling of his game. I think that happens a lot. I think particularly with big men, when you're a big man and you've been bigger than your competition, and then all of a sudden you're not, you got to adjust your game. You got to take it up a notch, but you also got to learn how to operate against someone more of your physical equal. And some kids can't do that. And some kids just can't adjust to the higher level of play. So yeah, typically I want someone who's had success. I want someone who's won. And I want someone who's proven that they can earn playing time and get on the court. But that isn't, across the board saying, I just want the little school guy. But I think in most cases that does fit what they're trying to do better.
It depends on coach, system, player. Like, there is no one right answer here, but I think if you're looking at this Jerome Tang program right now, Byfall was a former McDonald's All-American. Yeah. Ugo was a top 50 recruit out of high school as well. And that didn't work out this year, right? Brendan Hazen wasn't the most highly recruited guy. Max Jones came out of nowhere, worked his way up to get to K-State. And those players, right, that's such a safer option, right? If they've proven it at a collegiate level, albeit a lower level, they've proven something tangible that you can look at that can translate to the Big 12. Whereas, those rankings, right, a lot of it Fitz is based off of potential, right? Now I know Cole and Wally, I'm not an expert on rankings and stars, but those guys, Byfall wasn't a McDonald's All-American, like I said, for what he was doing. It was because of what people thought that he could turn into, right? And so I think the ceiling with those 5-star guys out of high school is certainly higher, but just the consistency to get guys that come in, I would take Barry Brown. I know Barry Brown wasn't a transfer, but a guy like that, a hard worker who works his ass off, I'd take that all day, any day of the week over somebody that I'm not saying you're taking a chance on, but you're banking on upside. Whereas somebody that's proven it at a lower level, what you're going to get. And obviously that transition's tough, right? I wrote about Brendan Hazen this morning. That'll go up on Friday, Saturday, Thursday. I can't remember when that goes up, but Brendan Hazen progressed tremendously this year, Fitz. You remember when he committed and we all thought he was going to be a 3-point specialist?
Yeah,
and
that's it.
Early on, that was kind of the case, and then defense got better, and he was more of a complete player. He was not a liability for K-State on the court. So you can grow and get better if you've had I wouldn't even say Brendan Hazen had success at Villanova, but he had put stuff on tape to show that he was a sharpshooter. He could bring something to your team.
Who was your favorite of this transfer class that you felt was the best fit for Kansas State?
Talking about for just this year or for being a foundational guy for the program?
Just this year. Who do you think they did a good job bringing in and you would bring them in again if someone just like them popped up?
Man, that's a dang good question, Fitz. You're putting me on the spot here, boss.
Yeah.
I mean,
making you think.
Different guys for different reasons had strengths. Like I said, with Achor, it was a group of guys that couldn't click together and win together. But I would say Max Jones is a good guy. Even if he comes in for just 1 year, we'll see how that NCAA eligibility stuff works out. But I'm not saying you got to go in and bring a bunch of Max Joneses, right? I'm not saying that at all. Don't do that. Don't bring in a bunch of guys for 1 year and have them leave. But if you've got a solid foundation, you've got a solid group of guys, and you bring in a 5th-year player like Max Jones for a year with experience, maturity, a hard worker who was kind of an anchor, maybe not the glue guy, but just did all the right things on the court for Kansas State. That was really valuable, right, for Kansas State to have. And there's a lot of guys, a lot of newcomers that you can knock for certain things. I think at the end of the day, it's truly hard to find stuff that Max Jones maybe didn't, that you can truly be critical of from Max Jones. So I would go Max Jones Fitz, but that's a real good question.
Well, that was my answer too.
Sorry.
That's fine. And the reason is he came in and had to make an adjustment because he's used to being the star of the team. He was the star of the team, Tampa and Fullerton, and here he wasn't going to be. And I think even Jerome Tang promoted that. If you remember before the season, he thought Max Jones is a really good player. He's our best player. And everyone was like, what? And it turned out he is a very good player, but he is not elite. And I think he came to accept that and understand that at this level, his role is different. And he put on that blue collar and he started defending and rebounding and scrapping for the basketball. And he was one of the first ones to dive on the floor. And so I think it was a good signing. Not a great signing as a one and done. That's the type of player you want for 3 years, like a David Gasson, who then grows and gets even better than what David Gasson was. But if you can't get that second year for him, if that comes through with the NCAA, and who knows if it will, there's no There's just no rhyme or reason to sometimes what they do. If you get that, then it's a great addition to your program because he'll be incredibly valuable next year as a structure guy, a guy that will know how to lead through the system in which he's playing. I'll be
Fitz, I don't want to say this to fault the staff at all for not finding Max Jones earlier, because I mean, he was, like you said, at Tampa, like Division II. I'm not bringing this up to fault them, but in the future, you've got to identify those guys and find those guys earlier so that you can get Max Jones in your program for, 3-4 years rather than just one, maybe two.
I'm just going to say something here to be real honest. Those players have been around, and whether it's this staff or the previous staff, they've missed them, even if they're in their backyards. You know why Zeke Mayo was at South Dakota State, right? It wasn't because KU didn't offer him. It's because K-State didn't offer him. Here's a kid out of Lawrence. If K-State had offered him out of high school, do you think he's going to go to South Dakota State or play in the Big 12? And we've seen this repeated, that the coaches that have been at K-State, whether it's Tang staff or Weber staff, hasn't been great at looking at local players and projecting where they'll be. Bruce Weber's staff did an amazing job identifying Barry Brown, Wesley Iwandu, guys that came in as 3-star players that were 3-star players. They were mid-level 3-star players when they arrived. And then they just went to work and got better and better. Bruce was a really good X's and O's coach. My questions with him were never about that. And they turned into incredible players. And this staff did it with David Gasson to a lesser degree, came in from West Virginia, Virginia Tech, and then just started to blossom here. And if you could identify players like that out of high school and then watch them grow, you're going to do something really, really cool. But that hasn't always been how Kansas State's operated. Up next from El Camino Cat, he always sneaks a good one in. He's always got that question. You
know what? Me and Cole were texting this morning. I'm not going to get into the whole conversation, but favorite Wabash poster was brought up and El Camino Cat was mentioned. So El Camino Cat, we love you. Go ahead.
I do. I appreciate, I don't agree with him often. I mean, not that I disagree with him often. It's not like I agree with him and thus I love him. He challenges you to think, and I appreciate that. How do we go from recruits loving to hang at Tang's house on visits to players not buying in and then quickly transferring out once they are on the team? El Camino Cat, I'm going to let you go first because I've read this question 3 times and I understand it. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how to articulate what I want to say here because it's a really valid point. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Somewhere along the way, there's a hiccup, right? Now, whether that's the player decides to maybe not go off and do their own thing, or they don't want to trust the coaches, or maybe it's on the player, right? Or maybe it's just on the coaches for not being consistent with their message. I'm not here to tell you one way or another, right? But if it's somewhere along the way, the connection, right? When you commit, it's all love, it's connection, right? Everybody's happy when you're committing. Like both parties can't wait to accomplish great things at Kansas State. Somewhere that's being lost, and I'm sure Jerome Tang and the staff are trying to make sure that they don't. I'm not saying it to hit home runs on every single guy, but missing out on players that are going to transfer out, right? Minimizing that and understanding, maybe learning from those. I wouldn't even call it mistakes, but learning from the guys that do depart out. That's going to be key for them. So, like I said, man, somewhere along the way, I'm not here to blame a player or a coach, but somewhere there's a disconnect. At some point, tension grows, and like you said, Fitz, this is a real dang good question from El Camino Cat.
I think this is a fault of the coaches, and I've expressed this on a daily delivery, of not paying enough attention to the construction of the team and focusing too much on the individual parts and not worrying enough about how do these, not just parts fit together, these people fit together. Do we have the right alphas? Do we have someone that is a leader, but maybe not a positive leader. I think you can put Doug McDaniel into that until he bought in, and I think he became a positive leader. I think he learned the difference between, I'm going to bitch at you for not playing hard enough or whatever it is, to I'm going to lead by example, and then I have the credentials to yell at you or to get on you. I think these haven't been last 2 years, while they get along, necessarily cohesive teams, that they didn't quite fit together in the right way. But you're right. And maybe El Camino, part of it is that first season, we knew everything going on through Dream Dowling social media. For lack of a better description, he functioned as a teenage girl. Everything was on social media. He's constantly filming. You could see people getting annoyed. Dream's filming again, which is irritating. I can't go anywhere without being on the record, so to speak. I'm constantly got this camera running. I think he's backed off that quite a bit and maybe created the perception that it isn't as fun in many, reindeer games together as previous years. And I don't know if that's necessarily true either.
Fitz, I'll give an answer here, and maybe this isn't the right answer, but I'll take a jab at it because it was such a dang good question. But I understand that the recruiting pitch, right? The message to recruits from the staff is, minutes aren't earned, or minutes are not given, right? Minutes are not promised. We aren't promising you anything here.
Nothing's
at
promised.
Kansas State. You've got to earn it, and your practice performance and you determine minutes. It's on you to get those minutes. And I think as a recruit, maybe we talked about this earlier with the chore. I'm going to go in and get it, right? I'm going to steal it. I'm good enough. I'm going to get those minutes.
Yep.
And then you're going up against, a guy like Coleman Hawkins or anybody who's got experience or ultra talent. It's going to be pretty dang hard to maybe get on the court. And maybe I wouldn't say that. You can get on the court, right? Like David Castillo, I think, played in pretty much every game this year, but his minutes, I think it was like less than 10 minutes a game, right? So getting on the court and playing consistent minutes is probably two different things, but it's not, maybe it's a recruit, and I could be totally off on this. I don't want to speak badly upon any recruit or commit or somebody that's transferred out of the program, but maybe it's a sense of, hey, I'm going to go in and get it. And there's just only so many pieces of that pie to go around, Fitz, that not everybody's going to be happy.
I agree. I just think it's so hard to put together a team virtually from scratch every year.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it doesn't work. We see it work in first years quite a bit and then fail. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I was watching Michigan, Dusty May, who beat K-State at FAU in the Elite Eight. Like, they just won the Big 12 title. They're a 5 seed in the tournament.
Big 10
and
title,
he made they I think 10 newcomers. It was just like Jerome Tang all over again. We'll see if they can do that next year, though. It'll be interesting because you can do it, right? You can absolutely do it, but it's not something that you want to consistently rely on doing.
Yeah, you can't go into that first year and say, hey, I'm going to go get a bunch of players that can win for me right away, and then they all leave. Then you're back to where you took over. You've got to start building. And I think that honestly has been the problem, is they didn't start that building process early enough. The three guys that after Caleb Rich transfers out, which, we expect, I thought it was going to happen last year. It certainly is going to happen this year. Their entire first recruiting class, or substantial class, it's going to be gone. And, that's hard to overcome over and over. Let's do one more before we shut it down and go behind the paywall with a really good question coming up that gets into recruiting, the transfer portal, coaches. Oh yeah, it's going to be juicy. But here's our final one here. Itam BB, is our NIL budget for 25-26 as large as last year? I'm going to say I have no idea. I suspect it's close, but here is the disconnect with what people are getting confused. NIL this year is much different. You have until, I don't know what the date is, but sometime this summer before everything kind of reverts in-house. And then everything in the NIL world has to be NIL. Not just here, Coleman Hawkins, here's $2 million. It has to be deemed worthy of the amount you're getting paid. Whatever you're lending your name, image, or likeness to has to be, check through, make sure, doing that podcast once a week that you don't do every week, and you have a coach do it, maybe a teammate do it, you're not getting paid $2 million for that. I mean, that's what NIL will be. But the donors have not lost faith in this program and where it can be. But whenever I see someone say, why don't we transfer the money from here to there? I'm like, that's not your money. It's not K-State's money. It's a donor's money. And they can decide what the hell they want to give to. If they want to give $5 million to K-State baseball or volleyball or rowing, it's their money. May not be what the fan base would view as the most purposeful use of that money, but it's their money to use in name, image, and likeness. So I think the money will be close to the same, but I think they're going to be a little bit wiser in how they use it.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't have much to add, really. I mean,
really,
last year it was kind of go out and I don't want to say go pay for the best players, but that was kind of, I don't want to say that. That's not the overarching theme, but Coleman Hawkins, like, he was the best player available at that time, right? Last summer, and they paid a lot of money for him. So I think when you look at this new strategy, which was kind of the old strategy that they got rid of, and now they're back to it with foundational guys and building players in your system for multiple years. NIL, I know with football, kind of like you've hinted at, Fitz, is, okay, maybe the guys that we bring back, awarding them with maybe a little more NIL than just going out and spending it on newcomers, right?
Yeah, I agree. It will be very interesting to see how they approach this. I think lessons have been learned, and we'll get into all of that in a little bit behind the paywall. That's it for this version of the podcast, and we've got that bonus question coming up from Kevin 316, which is one of Gills' favorite Bible passages. And that's it for this edition of the Powercat Podcast. We'll see you if you're a VIP at Go Powercat on the other side. And if you're not, why? Can you explain yourself? No, you can't.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.